That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to my colleague from Oklahoma, I believe the Secretary of Defense has just responded last week and admitted that the $1 billion mission that he led against the Houthis, who do not have a navy, has not restored the transit of U.S. flag commercial vessels through the Red Sea, and in fact has resulted in the loss of 2 F-18 Hornets to the tune of $60 million apiece, as well as, I believe the last count was 7 Reaper drones to the tune of another $200 million. You are blowing through money like my fellow cadets and I did in our first Liberty after basic camp. Luckily, I didn't end up with a questionable tattoo. Your failures, Mr. Secretary, since you've taken office has been staggering. You sent classified operational information over Signal to chest thump in front of your wife, who, by the way, has no security clearance, risking service member lives in the process. You blew the $1 billion fight against the Houthis, whom, again, as my colleague says, has no navy, and yet you lost all of those aircraft. You've created such a hostile command environment that no one wants to serve as your chief of staff or work with you in other senior DoD leadership roles. But what we should all be talking about more than all of this is that you have an unjustified, un-American misuse of the military in American cities, pulling resources and attention away from core missions to the detriment of the country, the warfighters, and yes, the warfighting that you claim to love. I don't know if this is because you are too inexperienced and incompetent to understand the real threats facing our country, or if it's because you are just an unqualified yes man who can't tell the president how to keep Americans safe. You are focusing on renaming bases for Confederate generals. You said just now to Senator King that to a man and to a woman, we would rather be associated with the old Confederate names. Well, I am one of those women. I served at Fort Rucker, Alabama, a base that was named for a traitor who took arms against the United States of America, led troops who killed Americans. It was renamed for Mike Novosel, a Medal of Honor recipient, who in his citation for the Medal of Honor includes that he saved 29 American lives, to include hovering backwards in a helicopter towards an enemy bunker where a wounded American was laying and saved that person, including after being taken fire himself. I know a little something about what it takes to fly a helicopter when you've been hit by enemy fire. That was heroic. I'd rather be associated with Mike Novosel than a failed Confederate traitor. I don't know whether you are inexperienced or too incompetent, but I wonder when you will actually focus on our nation's warfighting mission. We know that California is just a deliberate, systematic, political and dangerous campaign led by you. We should not be using our military to play cops against Americans. General Kane, as chairman, a key part of your job is to coordinate military planning across the joint force. Is the department currently incorporating into any military plans expanding the use of the reserve forces to include the National Guard or active duty troops to support domestic law enforcement, including in other locations in the United States?
Senator, you know, we careful.
No, General.
Well, it's not really a yes or no question, Madam Senator. We plan all kinds of different things.
I think it is a yes or no question.
I'm not aware of anything, but the reason why I'm answering is the tags may be looking at something that I'm not aware of.
What are you doing at your level? You're not aware of that happening at your level? Because we know that on his first day, President Trump directed U.S. Northern Command to revise its unified command plan to add new planning requirements to combat, and I quote, criminal activities. A series of follow-up executive orders continue to redirect DoD priorities to supporting domestic law enforcement, including one in April that tells DoD, and I quote, use national security assets for law and order. In other words, do law enforcement's job. I'd like to enter these executive orders into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
Secretary Hegseth, you say you are focused on warfighting and warriors. These are your words. Yet you are diverting untold DoD resources and attention to a fundamentally non-military mission of domestic policing. Across the country, we have qualified police officers who are trained for that mission. They know those streets better than the Marines you deploy to Los Angeles, who normally focus on the Indo-Pacific. And you recently approved 700 more troops in 3 other states to do admin and logistics works for ICE. You say all of this is valuable training, but I would much rather have our troops do tough, realistic training relevant to high-end combat. Instead of typing in spreadsheets for ICE, they should be conducting live fire maneuver exercises. Instead of patrolling American neighborhoods and standing in front of federal buildings, they should be rehearsing call for fire missions. We have local police who can stand in front of those federal buildings. And the list of distractions goes on. You are encouraging the DoD workforce to go work for DHS in increasing numbers. You're pulling the military away from facing foreign enemies who literally say things like death to America. And you're putting troops with weapons aimed at Americans. Mr. Secretary, let the military get back to its real job. Stop forcing them to do DHSs. And if you want to be DHS Secretary, maybe you can apply for that job when you're fired from this one due to your incompetence.
At the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, Senator Tammy Duckworth delivered a sharp and passionate critique of Secretary Pete Hegseth's leadership and use of military resources. She began by highlighting what she called a billion-dollar failure in the Red Sea mission against the Houthis, a group without a navy, where the U.S. lost 2 F-18 Hornets and 7 Reaper drones. To her, this represented reckless spending and operational failure rather than strategic strength. She accused the secretary of not only mismanaging critical missions, but also of compromising national security by sharing classified operational information through unsecured channels for personal reasons. Duckworth didn't stop at operational issues. She raised concerns about the climate within the Department of Defense under Hegseth's leadership, pointing out a hostile command environment where no one wanted to serve as chief of staff or fill senior positions. But what she emphasized even more was what she called a dangerous misuse of the U.S. military within American cities. She argued that the military's role is to defend the nation against foreign threats, not to act as a domestic police force, calling the diversion of resources unjustified and un-American. She then challenged Hegseth's position on renaming military bases named after Confederate figures. Responding to his claim that service members preferred the old names, Duckworth shared her own experience serving at Fort Rucker, a base once named after a Confederate traitor. She expressed pride in its renaming to honor Medal of Honor recipient Mike Novosel, who saved 29 American lives in combat. For Duckworth, honoring those who actually defended the country was more meaningful than preserving names tied to those who fought against it. She pressed General Kane on whether the Pentagon was making plans to use active duty troops or National Guard forces in domestic law enforcement. While he avoided a direct yes or no, Duckworth pointed to Trump-era executive orders instructing the Pentagon to support law enforcement, warning that such directives were pushing the military into missions that did not align with its core purpose. Duckworth condemned the deployment of Marines to Los Angeles and the approval of 700 more troops to work in administrative roles for IC. She argued that these tasks stripped away precious time that should be dedicated to combat readiness, live-fire exercises, maneuver training, and preparing for real national security threats. She noted that local police are trained and equipped to handle domestic law enforcement, not the military. Her commentary painted a picture of a Defense Department losing focus on its fundamental mission. She accused Hegseth of pulling the military away from confronting foreign adversaries, those who openly chant death to America, and instead pointing weapons inward at Americans. Her message was clear. If Hegseth wants to run DHS, he should apply for that job after being removed from this one. In her view, the military must return to its real purpose, defending the nation, not policing it.